Steven Interviews You. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Steven Interviews You. This is episode number 13. My name is Steven Vitz, and this is where I just sit down and have a casual chat with a very special guest. And his name would be, introduce yourself.
Tony Reali. Steven,
Wow.
we've been waiting 4 months to do this. Thank you for being patient with me. Since I signed off around the horn, I've had a crazy summer of really throwing myself into dad life, as I always am. But I mean, just the kids, it's all consuming when you've got three. And then plotting out what's next, which I'm excited about. So please, let's go.
Yeah, just an honor to be doing this with you, Tony. So let's
Likewise,
just get started.
Steven. I'm guest number 13, right? I mean, this is a big one. This is lucky number 13.
Episode 13, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
All right, so let's just get started. Getting into sportscasting.
Yeah.
You attended Fordham University.
I did. Mm-hmm.
This is just basically backstory. What got you into sportscasting and sports in general?
It's the best job in the world would be what got me into it. 5 years old, Steven. I had a Fisher-Price microphone, and I would walk around the house saying, "This is Anthony Reali talking about the Yankees." It's as simple as that. I was hooked. I used to I love physically reading what we used to call a newspaper, Steven.
Yep.
It was the Staten Island Advance in my home for some time, and then the Asbury Park Press, New York City, New Jersey. So I used to read the papers and taking my sports in that way. And then, of course, Sports Center came every hour on the hour as I became a middle schooler and high schooler, and I used to memorize the lines. But I knew I wanted to be a sportscaster since I was 5. I wanted to be part of the game, and I didn't think I was going to be able to play the game professionally, but I knew I wanted to be part of the game, and I always felt like I was when I was hosting Around the Horn and appearing on PTI.
Yeah. So more about Fordham University. What was it like there? How closely did you follow Fordham sports in general?
I did, of course. But I mean, I went to Fordham because, again, I'm from the New York City area. And the guys I grew up, the men and women I grew up listening to talk about sports, the voice of the Yankees, the voice of the Knicks, the voice of the Nets, the voice of the Giants, they all went to Fordham. That was enough for me. I was committed in my head when I was a freshman in high school, maybe even earlier. So first week at Fordham, Steven, I'm already at the university radio station, 90.7 FM. And I'm signed up. I'm in the sports department before I'm in class. And I am going with the women's basketball team and the men's basketball team that semester on the road, and I'm interviewing players. And then slowly I'm calling games, and I'm calling my own radio show for 3 hours every Saturday. And then I'm covering the Yankees and the Mets and the Giants and Jets. That all happened. As a student at Fordham, I was in the Yankees press box as a professional radio journalist, right? Interviewing players. So that's 19-year-old Tony talking to Derek Jeter in 1998 while the Yankees are on their way to a 125 and 50 record and maybe the best season of baseball history. And I was there with a special seat for it. So once you do that, there's no going back, Steven. So that is what started everything in my mind. Like, I can't do another job. I was just interviewing Derek Jeter at 19, whatever I'm going to be doing. Now, Derek Jeter turned into Woody Page and Tim Kalishaw as I was talking to them every day, and Mina Kimes and everybody. But it was the same heartbeat for me. Like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this great sports story.
That's wonderful. So you were a beat reporter for New York-based teams.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote for them. How'd you get noticed? How'd you get into that?
Yeah.
What was the process like?
I think it's different for everybody who wants to break in the business. And the advice I would give to anybody now, especially young people when I talk to high schools and colleges, but it's the same advice that I would give to you. And the same advice I gave myself this summer, Steven, is to do what you're doing right now. Roll, turn on the camera, turn on your computer, start rolling, and just put in some great time in front of a camera talking and doesn't need to go anywhere. It could, I mean, you're on the biggest streaming service in the world right now. You can be on YouTube. But my point is, that was not the case when I was breaking into the business. But even just recording your voice talking and doing interviews and taking on interviews with pros, taking on interviews with your sister and your brother, it really doesn't matter. It's just, I was physically in my younger years in front of the TV describing the plays that were happening in the Yankee game or Giants game, right? That's play by play. But now a person of this generation can actually record it and put it on the internet. That's great. But what then became my real passion was sports talk, you know? So how did I get noticed? Well, I wanted to be, name your play-by-play announcer, Mike Bream, you know, Bob Costas when he was doing play-by-play, Kevin Harlan, you know, whoever you like now, Gus Johnson. And I have people in my universe, my college friends who are doing that, right? My personality and my energy was just a couple dials different. And I think you could sense that from this interview so I'm a communicator, but I get very excited. And there are some guys who do it great. Harlan and Johnson would be two guys I would, as an example of being excitable play-by-play announcers who do it right. Mine was not right. Mine was a little too wacky and crazy, but it came into a place where I was better situated for sports talks. Now we're thinking about the great radio shows maybe you grew up with in Ohio. For me, it was Mike and the Mad Dog in New York. Sports talk. But, you know, you got to put in your time for that too. That's not how I did it. It's how I would have done it, but I happen to also like sports trivia, Steven. I think you do too, right?
Yep.
Sports fans love knowing everything, right? So I submitted and got a job being a researcher and a writer for a sports trivia show that happened to be on ESPN. How? You know, right place, right time. I was in New York. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire had taken over the world as far as game shows, and they were thinking about a sports spinoff. And then I became a writer on that show. It was hosted by Kenny Mayne. It's called A 2-Minute Drill, and it was on ESPN. That's how I came into the ESPN universe. This is in the year 2000 now. So I'm a writer and a researcher. And then the advent of what became debate on TV timed out to exactly this moment. And Pardon the Interruption had not launched yet, but they were looking for somebody to be on staff and be the researcher and work with the show in informing the writing of the show and the arguments. And then I met Tony and Mike, and that's when everything changed, because they saw my personality as a want to be sportscaster, and they said, let's make you the sidekick. So that's when things are hard to use as an example of this is the way to do it. You know, that was a fluky thing, but you have to understand with life, even yourself, Steven, who knows where this is going to go right now. You know, if this goes viral, you're in the position to be in a place where people are going to see you, and then fluky or not, it's how you respond and take that opportunity. Right. And I think PTI being the best debate show of all time helped.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned those shows, 2-Minute Drill and Pardon the Interruption, because I was going to get into that. What were those shows like? What was it like writing for such shows? And personally, one of my favorite shows growing up was, of course, Pardon the Interruption. I love that. I loved how whenever, Tony and Mike, whenever, they probably missed something stat-wise, you'd be there at the end, fact-checking them.
That's such a good idea. I can't say I came up with it. I was part of the team that came up with it, but I think that should apply still on shows. Having accountability is so important, especially when you're delving into both, opinion-based arguments and debates, or conversations, you might call them, and then even when it goes to journalistic-based things. Now, I understand not everybody wants to be corrected. That's a tough thing. That was one of the grace that Tony and Mike had, that they could, by a young kid at the time when it first started, be corrected on TV. That's a big deal. I mean, how did I find those shows to be? I'll give you the secret is they are, of course, a sports show. And in your mind, you're like, that's a sports show, but it's not. They work in something I like to call dynamics, right? The dynamic between Tony and Mike is why that show is a success. And it's why any show that I create going forward, I'm going to view it from that space. How is this relatable to an audience? How is this unpredictable? Because you can't just give people exactly the same thing every day or what they want. Well, you don't have just two best friends as your dynamic or mentor and mentee. You don't even have brother and brother. You have a married couple. That's what you have. So that is a relatable dynamic. You're at home thinking, this is me and my best friend, or me and my wife, or me and my husband, or me and my mom and dad, just how they could get to each other, get on each other's nerves, and come back with love. That's why, for me, being 3 feet off camera during that show, or on air in that show, or in the newsroom, is how I remember it most. Why that show is the success it is, and why it's gonna make it 25 years on TV, which is ludicrous. And the same was true for Horn. 23 years on TV, an amazing number. How do you get to 5,000 episodes? Well, I mean, you get to it because it's a sports show and there's new sports stories every day. You never lose sight of that. But once you take one more step, it's got to be about, I think, the interplay between the people in the show. You can apply this to sitcoms. You can apply this to, dramatic series you watch on HBO or Netflix or whatever. Do you see yourself or something that reminds you of your life in this show? Is it relatable? And then is it giving you something unpredictable? So whatever I do next is going to still have that baseline. But that's what jumped out to me to answer your question.
Yeah, there was a time where I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area during the early 2000s. That's when Pardon the Interruption, Around the Horn really started to get going. And so that every time that I just stopped doing my schoolwork, I just watched those shows in particular.
Thank you.
It was just, I was like, it really got me going as far as being a sports fan is concerned. So, yeah.
I think it's about education, of course.
Yeah.
But, enlightening, but entertaining, right? I mean, I don't even mean to say education. I was thinking because you were a young person, maybe just inside or outside of school. But, I mean, you're learning things about sports. That's always cool if you're learning, like you said. But, I mean, you want to be entertained. That's the business we're in, So the entertaining factor of that, that show, both of them were, I think, I'm going to speak honestly now from my own perspective, different than everything else that's on ESPN. And other shows have kind of come to form since then and borrowed some things, and now it's harder to differentiate, excuse me. But I mean, Around the Horn was a game show with a scoring system nobody could interpret except the person who was scoring it, and even they had to think of it, and a mute button and a winner at the end of the show for something that is totally unwinnable, right? A sports debate. Nobody ever really wins a sports debate, but it was meta-referential, to borrow a word that we use now. It was meta, right? You were really walking the viewer down a path to say, we're going to have some fun, we're going to get a winner, but the reality was the voices were the thing, and how we amplified the different sides of it were the thing. And now you go home and you think about it in your own head and you play out that debate. And then PTI with two debating the way they did, but the rundown and the odds makers and the other types of devices you used, it wasn't just like who's going to win the game and who you got. We did that sometimes, but other times we had more, creative games where I think it's not just about who you got, but why do you think this, and prove why you think this to me right now is the best opinion. I like that, right? I don't necessarily, I mean, I've had a million sports debates off air with my best friends and my family members and people on the street. Had one just yesterday. I love the show, blah, blah. And then we're in the middle of a debate. And I like that. I love that. But it's not just like, I think they're going to win. Okay, thank you very much. I mean, prove to me in this moment why you think your opinion is best. And that's the kernel of how I scored Around the Horn, in a couple of other ways. But get to that, right? That was it for me.
Yeah. So I was going to get into Around the Horn as well, because that was a show definitely growing up for me that I really paid attention to, especially around the time when, remember USC versus Texas?
Of course, I was watching the highlights just today. Vince Young was in my feed for some reason. I don't know why. And I was just watching his career highlights at Texas, but I remember the game. Yeah.
That was really like the really high point of when I was watching shows like Around the Horn,
Yeah.
where I was like, okay, what are these guys' opinions on this game between USC and Texas? I was
Yeah.
really glued to the TV at that time. And
Mhm.
it was like really interesting stuff at that time.
Yeah. For
So
me, I mean, there was an evolution, and it's been on for so long. PTI and Horn was on for so long that we saw some of the greatest games, and I've talked about some of the greatest athletes. When I signed off Around the Horn last spring, I remember I was thinking, well, how do you end on one show? But it became pretty obvious to me, you end talking about the greatest stories that you had the chance to talk about in that time, or the greatest athletes that you had at that time. And that's kind of how we approached it then. But that USC Texas game on the list of just like high level great games that we watched. There were wackier games, there were bigger moments. If I had to flag one for me, I think the Red Sox beating the Yankees after being down 3 games to none in 2004 and then going on and winning the World Series and breaking the curse. I think that to me was the biggest story, but that's more my own background of being of all my sports, baseball is my favorite, and having covered the Yankees and Red Sox just 5 years earlier, and then the 3-0 comeback. For me, that was the biggest one. But I would take anybody's argument that they thought Brady's comeback from 28-3 or LeBron's comeback from 3-1 was the biggest story we covered in our 25 years.
and another one that just came to my mind, the New York
Yeah.
Giants.
Yeah.
Speaking of Brady, how the Giants came
Yeah,
back in
18 and
that
0
one Super Bowl.
Patriots and how the Giants came back. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, two times, two Giant wins over the Patriots. Those were big games. One play in particular then would be the David Tyree catch with the helmet and the ball, which was the last catch of his NFL career. I always think that's like the most amazing asterisk on top of that story, so that's another one, and we saw the GOATs, of our lifetime in that time. So just naming them, you can have a long list, but you saw the very end of Jordan, but then you got all of LeBron, and you got Tiger Woods and Serena Williams and Michael Phelps and Tom Brady. You saw things with Shohei Ohtani you never saw before, that's just one after the other. Caitlin Clark was trying to make a case in our last 2 years to be one of the more important storylines we covered. We just talked. I mean, when when you're doing a daily show, and I know it more than anybody. Like, I'm trying to be unique in that story in every single day. But then you're on to like week 7 of a Tiger Woods story, and you just keep on going. Michael Phelps, in the Olympics, you talk about him every day. And it's just like, we can't even believe what we're seeing. And Caitlin Clark got like that for me too, because it was, an assault over like a 3-month span where she was just breaking every record, or at least trending on all social media, and yet felt like you had to talk about her, and I'm all right with that.
So you mentioned the Yankees.
Mm,
I do have a friend
yeah.
who was a baseball player. His name is Travis Garcia.
Uh-huh.
He only made it to independent league baseball,
Uh-huh. That's great.
but this like way back, I was a
Mhm.
blog correspondent for my local baseball team when they were in the independent leagues.
Yeah.
And Travis, he was like the
What was the
starting
name of
short.
that team?
Chillicothe Paints.
Mm,
Chillicothe Paints in South Central Ohio. I've spent like a couple years doing that, being a blog correspondent, and I developed a close friendship with Travis
yeah.
Garcia. Um, don't know where he is now, but if he's watching this, shout out to you,
Maybe
Travis.
he'll reach out to you after seeing this. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
I mean, so now you're touching on something else that matters to me when I'm even in sports talk. I mean, you made a deeper connection with somebody you were covering, which is great, or your audience, right? And for me, as somebody who's, I mean, again, sports is the thing. It's why we're here. We get it. I'm no one's saying this is bigger than the sports, but it's that connection that you have maybe with a certain sport, a certain athlete, or your audience that really makes something fulfilling, right? I'm going to use ridiculous words now to describe Around the Horn and PTL. Like, there aren't forms, but in your head, you're always the star of your own movie, right? In your head, you got to imagine like that. For me, it was about the connection. Maybe you had it with Travis. I felt like I had it with hundreds, if not thousands, if not even more than that. I hope it's more audience members, just like a one-on-one connect. Like you reached out to me and now we're here today. That type of connection, that means a lot to me. That was why I'm doing it. That's literally why I'm in the business.
Yeah. So speaking specifically about ESPN,
Yeah.
you got your start there and you
Mhm.
spent a long time being there. Uh, what was it like working at ESPN in general, from how it started and how your run there ended?
Another
Uh,
dream job for me. I mean, I have nothing but dream jobs. So it may sound similar to when I was writing trivia questions. I'll say this. I never really got the full. I didn't live in Bristol or work in Bristol, Connecticut, which is where their headquarters are. I was always kind of, I was in Washington, D.C. for my first half of the 25 years, and I was in New York City for the second half of my 25 years there. So I had an opportunity to be a proud part of their story, and I feel great that shows made a full life term, 23 years for Around the Horn, and that feel great that PTI is still on. I think there was probably more gas in the tank, but I could understand why they made decisions. So I'm always going to have great memories of everything we did on TV, and especially I'll remember my last episode of Around the Horn. That's for sure. That was I had my kids right off camera with Ellie the elephant from the New York Liberty. You can't get better than that.
yeah, around the horn, I remember some of my favorite commentators,
Mhm.
guests on that show. I'll
Well,
just na-
somebody just sent me this. So this is new. This is from Caroline Willett, who is our was, I should say, our show's researcher, but first family of Around the Horn here. So now she made a playing card with all my stats. So these are my stats, the Around the Horn stats. Maybe this is
nice.
backwards right now. But in addition to that, you can't have a deck of cards without having everybody. Well, this is your Joker right here, right? Okay, that's your Joker. Okay. Here's some other kings and queens of Around the Horn. Just got this in the mail today. That's why I'm showing it. I'm very excited about this. I'm gonna have to go through this, looking at everybody's stats. Look at there's that Bomani you just saw, Pablo Torre. Yeah. So please go on. I'm just very
Okay.
excited to take out something that. Look at this. How many?
Yeah. So some of the favorite commentators that I watched on that show, I'll just name a few.
Yeah.
Uh, Tim Cowlishaw.
Yes. There he is, Tim
Yep.
Callis. So the frontline reporter for Dallas sports for over 3 decades now, which is amazing. Did have his start in a couple of other places, I believe in Oklahoma and then in Northern California. But a man who had been in the trenches opposite Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer and always Jerry Jones. It was, if you wanted to know anything about maybe the most famous sports franchise of them all, the Dallas Cowboys, he would be the first guy you would talk to. So to have him on every day. Also, a man who's covered World Series and NASCAR, which was always nice to lean on Timmy for, and one of the great golfers. And people always ask me, who's your favorite panelist? The answer is Tim Cowlishaw.
Yeah. Yeah. Another name, J.A. Adonde.
J.A.
He was
Adonde.
also good. Yeah.
J.A. Adonde. People always ask me, who's your favorite panelist? J.A. Adonde. Now, J.A. Adonde and I are probably closest in age of all the panel. When I took over, I was very young, and Jay was the young man on the show, right? So he had a background. Well, of course, he's the most L.A. born and raised guy, but did do some time in Chicago and in Washington. And when he was in Chicago, he was covering the Bulls and their early title years, 91, 92, 93. And to have been both a microphone away from Michael Jordan and then Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, and now to chart his whole time through basketball history. Now he's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. That's pretty great. So to have Jay on at any time. Also, on one of my birthdays, he sang karaoke and he sang Michael Jackson. Got up that high with the voice, which was impressive. Yeah.
Another one, favorite panelist of mine, Bill Plaschke.
Bill Plaschke. People always ask me, yo, Tone, who's your favorite panelist? Bill Plaschke. Bill Plaschke right here. This is him. And this is a pose of his, right? Look at this. We call him the Reverend because he was So integrity is the word I would use, which is right behind your left shoulder. He has such great integrity and such a great compass to him. And I love Bill's humanity more than anything. Some of the columns he's written were so full of heart, which is what I appreciated. We had 9 AP columnists of the year on Around the Horn, right? 9 times somebody won. All 9 of them were Bill Plaschke, is the story. That tells you how great he is. He's going to be a first ballot sports writing Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and also one more name. I always felt bad for him because he would get eliminated early. Michael Smith.
Michael Smith would not get eliminated early. Get out of town.
Sometimes
Let me
he
see
would.
if I can find a Michael Smith in here.
Yeah.
Michael Smith, I think, had a 30% winning percentage. I think while he may have won 30%, maybe he was eliminated first in those other ones. Michael and I were the same age, similar energies. Love Michael Smith, love his family, his kids, throwing them in the pool before we played, you know, so that's where that relationship is. People always ask me, Michael Smith, my favorite panelist of all time. But being his age and being on the sidelines with the New England Patriots, covering Belichick and Brady at that age, very similar to what I just experienced in my life with the Yankees and Derek Jeter and Joe Torre, like I was saying, front row seat to all that, really informed him. But also, I mean, he's got a performative ability to him. When he and Jamel did His and Hers, they used to act out movies, which is something I always loved doing on Around the Horn too. But they were even better. When did everybody get so good at acting? So if you have a chance, go look for Michael Smith, Jamel Hill doing an Anchorman remake or a Coming to America remake. The acting is, yeah.
Yeah. So just thinking back to all the memories I had when I was watching Around the Horn, it was good stuff at the time.
Thank you. Yeah, I felt every second of it. There's Michael. There, I knew I would find him. So, and then this is his look. When he wanted to show that he was really thinking about something, he would touch his chin and give it to. That's what I mean about performative. 30.3% win percentage. I told you that number's right. So, long story short, you know, I hope viewers felt like they knew the people behind the people, right? Sports media and media in general can be criticized, and I'll be there criticizing parts of it as well. I mean, absolutely, it's not infallible. But I feel like it's best, or the way I like to do it, I'll say, I'm trying to be who I am off camera, right on camera too, when I'm hosting Around the Horn, when I'm doing the next show, right? I'm trying to give you a one-to-one. Not everybody does that. Not everybody should do that. That's for sure. That's not advisable for everybody. I'm a very open person. I'm a extroverted person, whatever. But even with the people who I know on Around the Horn who are not that way, I'll give you an example because he's a dear friend of mine. People always ask me who my favorite panelist is. It's Kevin Blackistone. And he's not an extroverted dude. He's a brilliant guy. He's a journalist, but he's more studious. I haven't even studious. They're all studious. But I mean, there's a nature to him that I needed to make him know he was going to be in good hands with the host and the show. And then I was going to ask him to tell me about his experience with the people who don't return the carts at the groceries, you know, because he would go crazy on that. And I get him to liven up about that because he knew it would be, you know, and you got to see a little side of him that I think is relatable, which is what I'm trying to say. So Kevin Blackistone has covered world conflicts before, not to mention all the sports, but I'm just saying he's a full person. He's lived a full life of being a reporter with the Dallas Morning News and the Washington Post. He's covered events in sports and outside of sports. But there's nothing I'll remember more then he talks about the Thanksgiving feast and what he has at his table, or the grocery market shopping carts, or his cycling days. You know, he's a big cyclist. He likes to put in 50 and 100 miles.
So going back to college football, because that's one of the things I
see that. I see those Ohio. I see the Bobcats behind you. Let me see. Bearcats, yeah. Bobcats. Bobcats. I was confused with the big.
Except they fell behind you.
Enzo, that's my man, Enzo. Yeah, this is NZ. This is his book from last year. This is just, I use this to cover some of when you have kids, everything just grows out of control. So this is just like stub blown up. So I use it to block some of that. Sorry about that. The Bobcats. Yes, I momentarily got confused with the Binghamton Bearcats.
Yeah,
Tony
something behind me
Reali,
right there.
the Ohio
You
Bobcats.
see that
Yes.
banner
I
behind
think
me? Yeah.
1-2 at this moment, but there's hope. I think there's reason for a little bit of hope.
Yeah, as I said off air, even though we're 1-2, I like how mentally tough our team is right
Yeah,
now.
that's
Because
good.
we had like a really tough gauntlet. Nobody gave us a chance to win any of those games, but we did. We
Yeah,
beat West Virginia
yeah.
the
A
second
win
game.
over West Virginia could catapult the team once they get into conference into being a stronger team. So I think that's got to be the hope.
Yeah, so yeah, we played Ohio State tough. Obviously, the final score there, 37-9.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you do? National champions we're
Yeah.
playing up against. So, but yeah, about college football. Obviously, we talked about Fordham University at the beginning. I'm
Yeah.
sure you still follow them, but they
Yes,
are.
yes, yes. I will say this. My last year there, they were coached by Dave Clawson, who just put in a decade at Wake Forest and got Wake Forest to some bowl games, which is a great accomplishment at Wake Forest. There, my first year was Dave Clawson. My last year was Dave Clawson's first year, 0-11. I remember, getting the chalk talk from him about where he saw the program going, and everything he said basically played out to a T. They had turned it around within 2 years. They were playing, and now this is the championship series, FCS, formerly 1AA. They made it into the playoffs. They made it into the tournament there within a couple of years, and they had one of the number one or two offenses in all of Division 1AA at that time. He loved his slot receiver, right, which is what everybody I think became part of the vernacular, or not vernacular, the focus. With Wes Welker and players like that in the pros a little bit after this. But in that moment, the slot receiver was not the most important, gadget in your offense. But I remember in 1999, it was for him. And that turned out to be more of the case. So Dave Clawson started 0-11, but got Fordham back to a place that they were very proud of very quickly. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I mentioned Fordham FCS school.
Yeah.
I'm sure you follow FBS
Yeah.
college football as well. What are some of your favorite teams on the FBS level?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everybody is now watching the tug of war and conference between the SEC and the Big Ten, and I'm trying to gauge all that. If I was going to give you my honest answer, I wanted to see what Oregon could do the last decade to 2 decades. I was excited. Now this is going back some time, but when they became, I like the outliers. I like teams that are doing something a little bit different, right? So I'll go back to Chip Kelly's offense and running as many plays as they did. I want teams. I think there's always a distinct advantage of doing what other people aren't doing, right? I mean, you can look at some teams and they're going to do something better than the other team. That's fine. But when you're doing something that's really out of the field, so those are the teams I fall in love with a new team every year. Is what I'm telling you. It's not. I'm not going to just be tracking. Okay, I'm an Alabama guy. This is what I'm going to achieve. Or I loved the Big 12 last year. Not the best conference by any means, but they needed to consider a 16 tiebreaker going into their last day of the season, which I loved, right? And so much energy went to Colorado and Dion, but then I mean, it was every team was really in play there at the end, and I kind of fell for Kansas State for no reason, but because I like the way they were running. So last year I was a Big 12 guy. Because if you're going to tell me you have 6 teams or maybe even 7 at that going into that last Saturday in play for your conference championship, for me, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So keeping it to the state of New York, I'm sure you hear stuff about Syracuse,
Yes.
Rutgers, teams like
When I was
those.
growing up, there was a kicker named Sean Reali. Not related to me, but his last name was Reali, kicking for Syracuse. This was in the late 80s or so. So that was always like, okay. And, New York has, playing college football, Columbia, which at one point was the worst team in the country many years ago. But they went 3 seasons without winning. Fordham, which its high point was certainly Vince Lombardi, and just one Cotton Bowl appearance. But that would have been 100 years earlier. And and then St. John's doesn't have a team. NYU doesn't have a team. Rutgers is only 10, 15, 20 miles away, but it really hasn't penetrated into New York. And Syracuse got a lot of attention in New York City.
Yeah. So about college football and how ESPN has been broadcasting games. Um, Obviously, we all watch the games on ESPN. How do you feel about ESPN? What they do broadcasting these games? What's
Oh,
your opinion on that?
well, I mean, I think broadcasting games is the lifeblood of any sports network, So having games rights, and I only have one goal. My goal is to be able to watch any game as easily as I can, as quickly and easily as possible, right? I don't want to click 7 buttons to get onto a stream. I want to click one fewer if I can, or one. So when I can get to a game easily, any subscriber is doing that best for me. For my own, I don't. It's not like I feel like there's a difference in real. I mean, I think NBC does a good job in their Sunday Night Football package. I like the way that looks. I think that's great. I mean, I think ESPN Monday Night Football is always and Monday Night Football has always been, its own thing. It's always great. I don't know if I rank my networks as far. I have, certain broadcasters I always love. I mean, I'm a lover. I just love guys like I mentioned, Kevin Harlan. Kevin Harlan's calling a game. I'm excited. I'm not sure I would be finding the game to make him call it. One of my friends calls CBS games. I'm always happy to see when Spiro Ditas has got a call. Titans versus the Jaguars near Spiro. But it's not like, that's a personal relationship. I'm not finding games because of broadcasters or networks. I prefer to just, watch the game I want to watch and hopefully get there as easily as possible. And that becomes harder. And we all recognize what that is now that there is 9 or 10 or 11 different networks who are putting out, college or pro football. And you got to figure out where the game is. It's not my preferred life to not be able to find it immediately, but I understand what it is. And anything that can at least serve fans and make it easier is my favorite type of game.
Yeah. So going back to uh, famous shows around the
Mhm.
horn,
Yeah.
PTI, all
Yeah.
those shows. Um, the stuff that I watch now, especially on YouTube, when I watch like college football related podcasts on
Mhm.
YouTube, I can tell there's like some sort of inspiration from shows like Around the Horn
I
and
think
Pardon
so
the
too.
Interruption.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you guys have left a lasting mark on what people do today on YouTube. So uh, obviously you've had time to watch some stuff on YouTube, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so what are your thoughts when you watch like a podcast
Well, I'm
on?
getting a lot of inspiration right now because this is where I want it. I mean, I'd be a fool now that I had a quick 20, like a quick 20-second timeout is what I would call it right now, into taking in what the landscape is as far as someone like myself who wants to continue to be on air and produce and create, right? Where would I best be creating right now? Well, 25 years ago, my answer would have been, oh, if I can get a TV show on ESPN, that'd be amazing. And it is. It is amazing. But the reality is, the landscape is so amenable now to somebody creating in a space like YouTube because it's already where people are. You don't have to find. I mean, you might have to. It may be a big ocean and you're a fish, and the fisherman's not going to find you immediately. But at least it's good to be in the ocean. You got to breathe the water. So I have been taking inspiration from all sorts of different shows. You mentioned podcasts. I mean, I love podcasts. I am also maybe even more of the mind of digital content that is the more, YouTube shows, right? But I even take it one from outside of sports. One I love right now is Rick Beato's music channel on YouTube. Beato spelled like Beato. And I see like parallels already between that and the sports industry because you can have debates about music. I can go around the horn. I'm going to have to come up with a different name now, just on music, right? And you can have a sports debate, a music debate, I should say, with 2 or 3 or 4 people. In the same way I was just doing around the horn. And I feel like Beato is doing things like that. He's ranking his top guitarists and drum solos of all time. He's taking dives into why the music of 2025 is not the same as it was in 2000, which was not the same in 1975, and how an audience receives it's not the same, how it's produced is not the same, and he's got critiques, but he's a music engineer and producer, so his critiques are sound. So that's now as I'm viewing it, I feel like as a host and a creator, I can connect with an audience in places like YouTube, just like I was connecting on ESPN, which was cable TV internationally. I was 175 countries or whatever, right? But I like intimacy. I like being myself and connecting. That's why we're here right now, Steven. You and I. You send me a note, and I'm here for you, right? And I feel like I can do that and have a sense of community in a great way on YouTube, and that's why it makes perfect sense in the world to be there.
Yeah, I mentioned YouTube podcasts because I watch shows on YouTube all the
What are you
time.
watching? This is now. Let me do a little
Okay,
research.
okay, and this is about sports still, college
Yeah, sure.
football,
Whatever.
because
Yeah,
I'm deep into that.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, there are a few shows that I can definitely recommend to you right now, Tony. Uh, College Football Mafia, that channel, they do a great job. They
Love
do a
the
great
name.
College
Love the
Football
name.
Mafia. You'll love it, and you would enjoy being a guest on their show once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Ray Liotta, Mafia.
Yeah,
I was just working on that. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah. You would enjoy being a guest on that show,
Yeah.
College Football Mafia. Yeah, and also Greg Flugar, Peek Around the Corner. He doesn't have guests on his show, but there's like a call-in
Yeah.
feature that he has where you call in and just talk to him, and he just answers your questions. He does a great job too.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are
I
just
mean,
a
so
couple examples.
I find myself thinking whatever I create next, that could be part of it. Very much has to be a part of it, because I like that. I like connecting with people, but I don't see any reason why we can't be going around the horn with you and him and somebody else, and then you win that one, you go to the next stage, and maybe you take on some of my friends that you know. I think that'd be pretty cool. I think to have a league like that of debaters would be kind of fun.
Oh yeah, also a couple others that are coming to my mind just now. The Big Mountain podcast.
Mhm.
Two fans, one fan of the Mountain West Conference, another fan of Big Ten
Mhm.
Conference. They just go back and forth, talked about the games. You would enjoy being a guest there too. That
Yeah,
they would love
great.
to have you.
Yeah.
Just another example there. Yeah, just really, there's a lot of creativity when I see college football podcasts these days. A
Mhm.
lot of creativity. So, yeah. Um, so let's segue into possible future plans of yours,
Yeah.
whether it be on YouTube or anywhere else.
Yeah.
What is in the works
Oh,
for
there's a
Tony
lot in the
Reali?
works. I'm cooking. I'm in the lab, or I'm in the kitchen. I'm just spitting stuff up. There's a mess all over the wall. There's 37 Google documents. There's all these things. Uh, but I am still, even with that, I could say razor focused on one thing. I really want to connect with fans and make content with fans. So I'm going to be doing that in whatever place makes sense. I think we just went through the list. I mean, that sounds pretty great. What you're just talking about on YouTube. I want to be at the biggest games and providing, human content. What does that mean? That means I want to talk to the parents of the athletes while the game's going on, and see who the real athlete behind that is from their parents. I think content like that. That's talking about the Olympics and the Super Bowl and some of the biggest games. I want to do game shows, sports trivia, and beyond. That's type stuff too. And this is a great big universe I'm talking about. I understand I'm not giving you any specifics because I'm still hammering away. But I like feelings. I like sports because it is really a direct transport of our feelings, right? I mean, you could be a 5 or 8-year-old and you love your team, and all of a sudden you're getting emotional about it. That shows you how direct it is, and that could even go through your whole life. You could even be the same way, and it's okay, to get really, happy when your team wins when you're 70. That's pretty great too, because it's about feelings, right? So the next shows I create are going to be all about feelings. They're going to have the pulse of the feelings and the fans. That's my goal. So I've had some incredible opportunities and offers, and I'm still weighing everything. But I have a pretty clear vision of how I want to do it, and I know I'm going to be able to enjoy the feeling side of sports, and then taking that to the rest of life.
And so my last question would be, what general advice would you have, Tony Reali? What
Yeah.
general advice would you have for enthusiastic sports fans wanting to get into the business,
Uh,
whether it be
Greatest
for
business in the
ESPN,
world. Yeah.
or any other network or any sort of sports media in general. What advice would you have?
Right. I think it's the greatest business in the world. I think it's even better now for someone breaking in some ways because of what we just talked about, how you could have your own YouTube channel as a 12-year-old and slowly um, show your passion for talking about sports or calling sports or whatever particular angle you have in the business. I think that's the same advice I had when I was in my high school years. Go to college and get on a college radio station. That still applies too because those still exist. Um, but it's important to those are in my mind's eye now that I've done, 8,000 episodes of ESPN TV. Those are like their own pilots that I had done when I was in high school and college, and the YouTube channel could be that for somebody, but it could be more than that too. You can have your own YouTube channel and have your own sponsor, and you don't need, if you're the voice or you're talking and the number one podcast about Ohio Bobcats football, and one of the team sponsors wants to sponsor your show and have you set up outside the stadium after a game, you're on your way. You're on your way. So I don't even know if my advice would be to see a job to see a job out there. It's almost a dream what the next job's going to be, right? By that I mean you would have grown up 5 years ago. You want to be a host of Around the Horn. Well, now Around the Horn's gone, right? But there is the next generation of whatever that is, and that's not necessarily going to be just a TV show on ESPN. It's going to be something more expansive than that. It's going to be a digital show, all over the world on YouTube that could then be seen by the people on Netflix, who then license it out for a year, who then pass it on to Spotify, and then you have you understand what I'm saying? Everything
Yep.
doesn't need to look or be a certain way. I think it's just the advice is to do, to be it, have your YouTube page, work on your talking, communicating, your angles, create, and see what you like, but then just always try to build it. No one's ever saying you invented one particular thing. You built on something, and that's okay. Go take Around the Horn, give it a next step, and make it go. College football mafia, I'm sure, you said they were borrowing from it, Steven interviews you. You probably took notes of an interview show that you liked, whoever it would have been, Bill Maher or Inside the Actor's Studio or Brian Gumbel or something like that. But you made it your own, and then you take it to the next place. That's how inspiration works, and that's what I would always recommend. What do you like? Try to do that version of it, and then try to build on it.
Yeah, I personally reference Larry King.
Larry King. Okay,
Yeah,
that's another example.
when it comes to interviews, I was like, yeah, Larry King, and just try to,
You know
spin it
who I'm
around
talking about
college
with
football.
Inside the Actor's Studio? His
Yep.
name is James Lipton. He's passed on now. He had a stack of cue card questions like this high, right? And I don't know why he would have 400, and they must have agreed with the guest, whoever would be the guest that day, that I want 1 sentence to 2 sentence answers, unless you really think you can expand, right? So he said, "What is your favorite color? What is your favorite?" Blah, 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 and he would just rip through them. But every fourth question, you would get deep with something, and it was great. And then he would always end it with, "What's your favorite curse word?" It's like, but now, what's the next generation of that? Hot ones, right? You're giving somebody an interview while making them slightly uncomfortable. I really respect that. I like that. I like that style of getting more intimate with somebody by getting them off their front foot for a little bit.
Well, Tony, this has been a wonderful experience.
Let me show you this.
Yep.
See this? Yeah, there it is. Somebody sent this one too. Now this is lunacy because Sarah Spain's overall defense or blocking and power needs to be like above 10. And my speed needs to be as high as it could be. I don't know. I can't really see where I was, but yeah, my speed is a 6. Come on now. Come on.
Yeah. It's been a wonderful experience doing this, Tony. I'm so thankful for you to be on my show as a special guest. This is the first time I've had a guest like this on my
Well,
show.
we're
So
lucky number 13. That means
yeah,
I hope every guest gives you. I mean, maybe you weren't hoping to go for 50 minutes because I talk so much, but there we are.
it's okay though. Yeah, and as far as like around the horn, all the panelists, I'm sure you guys, you keep in contact with each other. Let those guys know about me that if they want to be interviewed by me too, you know, just keep in contact with them.
Look
Let
at
them know
you,
about me.
Steven. Always
Yeah,
working here. Yeah, there
yeah.
you go.
Always looking for that opportunity. So, yeah, Tony Reali, you do have your own YouTube channel, by the way.
Oh yeah,
And
no,
yeah,
I definitely laid some ground there, and I'm gonna be turning out much more stuff in the near future for sure.
yep.
Uh,
And I will link that your YouTube channel in the description box below, so you guys watching this can check it out.
Thank you. You're my agent now.
Yeah,
This is great, Steve.
yeah. Thank you so much, Tony Reality, for being my special guest on this show. This has been Stephen Interviews You, episode number 13. Thank you guys so much for watching this. If you like this content, please give this video a like, share this content with your friends and family, and yeah, click the notification bell, all that when you subscribe. Thank you guys so much. Thank you again, Tony, for being on my show. This has been
Please.
Stephen Interviews You. We'll come back with more content soon enough. Take care, guys.